Nico Rosberg spent 4 years racing next to Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes. He saw what Hamilton looked like when he was hungry, what he looked like when he was angry, and what he looked like when the joy was gone. Rosberg walked away the moment he finally beat him. Now, a decade later, he is watching Hamilton from the outside and saying something that should worry every team on the grid. So why is the man who broke Hamilton suddenly sure that Hamilton is back? Rosberg is not guessing. He is certain. Hamilton is racing with joy again at Ferrari. His drive in 2026 looks nothing like the last 4 seasons. His body language has shifted. His energy on race weekends is different. And the reason, from Rosberg's view, is simple. Hamilton helped build the car he is now driving. He is no longer stuck inside someone else's project. He is racing a machine that does what he wants because he shaped it himself on Ferrari's simulator during the second half of 2025. Anyone else in the paddock says this, and it is a nice line on a broadcast and nothing more. From Rosberg, it hits different. This is the man who shared a garage with Hamilton for 4 seasons at Mercedes, who knew him as a kid racing karts, who studied Hamilton's mind closer than any rival in the sport's history, tracking every shift in his mood, his body language, his focus. Rosberg won the 2016 World Championship by finding every weak spot in Hamilton's armor, then walked away 5 days later because he knew what it cost him. He knows what a motivated Hamilton looks like, and he knows what a hollow version looks like. He is saying right now that the Hamilton showing up in 2026 is the real one. There is another reason Rosberg's red carries weight that most fans do not know about. Rosberg is friends with Vasseur, Ferrari's team boss. He has said publicly that he gets information about Hamilton's mood and work rate directly from inside the team. He is not reading body language from a television screen. He is hearing from the people who work with Hamilton every day at Maranello. When Rosberg says the joy is back, he is not guessing from the outside. He is being told from the inside. The Miami Grand Prix, just days ago, makes all of that harder to believe. Going into the weekend, Hamilton tells the media he feels fired up. Ferrari brings a package of upgrades to the Miami International Autodrome. The mood is positive. Hamilton qualifies 6th for the sprint and finishes 7th. Not great, but not a disaster either. He calls the sprint weekend challenging, but says it will not define them. Then the Grand Prix arrives. Hamilton lines up 6th on the grid. On the first lap, Franco Colapinto hits Hamilton's Ferrari, damaging the car in a way that ruins the rest of his afternoon. Hamilton is angry enough to flip Colapinto off as they continue around the circuit. He spends the rest of the race trapped in dead air. 7th on track, bumped up to 6th after Leclerc picks up a 20-second time penalty. 8 points across the full Miami weekend. His radio calls carry a tone that Formula One fans know too well by now. Down on power, stuck defending, nothing to fight with. After the race, Hamilton does not sugarcoat it. He says he had nothing. He says he struggled with power for some reason and spent the whole race just defending. He calls it a long afternoon in no man's land. That is not a one-off gripe. Hamilton raised the same power issue in Japan 2 races before Miami. Ferrari's battery problem, tied to the super clipping limits under the new 2026 energy rules, are cutting into his speed at the worst possible moments. The FIA actually changed the clipping rules ahead of Miami to help all teams, but it clearly was not enough for Ferrari. So Rosberg says joy, Miami says something else. The truth, as it always does in this sport, sits somewhere in between. And the only way to figure out which side is closer to reality is to look at the full picture. Go back 5 weeks before Miami, and the picture looks completely different. Hamilton's 2026 season starts in Melbourne in early March. 4th in the Australian Grand Prix, right behind Leclerc in 3rd. Clean, steady, quiet. A starting point. Round 2 in Shanghai flips the whole story. Hamilton finishes 3rd in the Chinese Grand Prix, his first Ferrari podium. It comes after a lap-by-lap fight with Leclerc that goes back and forth across multiple stints, the kind of racing Hamilton has not done since his best years at Mercedes. Hamilton calls it one of the most fun races he has had since battling Rosberg in Bahrain back in 2014. That comparison is not random. Hamilton is reaching back to the defining moment of his Mercedes rivalry. The race that made the world realize Rosberg and Hamilton were not just teammates, but enemies, to describe how racing a Ferrari in the midfield makes him feel. The podium breaks a 16-month drought. The last time Hamilton stood on those steps was the 2024 Belgian Grand Prix, in a Mercedes, in a different era of the sport. After the race, Hamilton says the result warms his heart. He says the team has been amazing for the past year and that he wants to keep pushing, keep digging, keep building. There is a phrase Hamilton uses before the season even starts that says, "more than any result could." He admits that in all his years of racing, he has never said he feels excited before a season. But for 2026, he is massively excited, and he says that is okay to admit. On Christmas Day of 2025, just weeks before pre-season testing begins, Hamilton posts on social media that for a moment he forgot who he was. But that mindset, he promises, is gone for good. These are not the words of a driver going through the motions. These are the words of a driver who believes again. The qualifying numbers tell a story the podium alone cannot. In 2025, Hamilton was on average 250 thousandths of a second slower than Leclerc in qualifying, a big gap. Through the first 4 qualifying runs of 2026, that gap has flipped. Hamilton is now roughly 17 thousandths faster. 4 sessions is a tiny sample. It proves nothing on its own. But the direction is clear. Hamilton went from a quarter second behind his teammate to dead level, and the swing happened in a single winter. That swing was not luck. During the summer break of 2025, while his results on track were falling apart, Hamilton was already building the car that would replace the one making him miserable. He set up meetings at the Ferrari factory in Maranello with Chairman John Elkann, Chief Executive Benedetto Vigna, Team Boss Fred Vasseur, and Chassis Design Chief Loic Serra. He brought written plans laying out changes he wanted to see in how Ferrari built the 2026 car, not vague suggestions, written documents with specific proposals. From June of 2025 on, Hamilton spent long stretches in the simulator at Maranello, giving feedback on how the car's suspension should feel, how the balance should shift, how the car should respond to his hands and feet. This was not a driver sitting in a simulator for an afternoon and signing off. This was Hamilton embedding himself in the design process, showing up at Fiorano over the winter, working with the engineers on a level that surprised people inside the team. Rosberg heard about it from his contacts at Ferrari. He called it crazy, the amount of behind-the-scenes work Hamilton was putting in. Ferrari did not just listen. They built the car around what he told them. Vasseur laid it out clearly before the Miami weekend. When the team sits down in June and asks the drivers what they want from the suspension, and the driver gives specific feedback, and that feedback shows up in the final car, the driver approaches the season with a completely different level of trust. Hamilton was the starting point for key design choices on the SF26. He did not have to adapt to a car someone else made. The car had been shaped to suit him. Before the season even started, Hamilton said a part of him was inside the SF26. He felt more linked to this car than anything else he had driven at Ferrari. The 2026 rules made all of this possible. Formula One brought in the biggest rule change in a generation. New engines with the MGU-H stripped out and the MGU-K tripled in output to 350 kilowatts, creating a roughly even split between the combustion engine and electric power. Active wings that shift between a low-drag straight-line shape and a high-grip cornering shape, replacing the old drag reduction system. A new overtake button that gives chasing cars extra electric power when they are within 1 second of the car ahead. Smaller, lighter, narrower cars running on fully green fuels. Every team started from zero. The old order was gone. But these new rules also created a new challenge that works against instinctive racers. The cars now harvest and deploy energy in ways that change how drivers manage every single lap. Lift and coast, battery saving, knowing when to use straight-line mode versus cornering mode. It is less about raw feel and more about managing systems. And Ferrari's system, at least through Miami, is not working as well as Mercedes' system. That gap is not something Hamilton can fix with talent alone. Hamilton bet his career on this moment when he signed with Ferrari. And 4 races in, he sits 4th in the Drivers' Championship on 51 points. His best start to a season since 2023. After the China podium, the defiance was back. The edge was back. Hamilton made it clear he believed the result proved he still belongs, and that the people calling for his retirement have not come close to what he has done in the sport. He took direct aim at former drivers questioning him, saying they do not have anywhere near his level of success. If you are finding this useful, hit subscribe. We cover Formula One every week and go deeper than the headline. By April of 2026, the story around Hamilton has totally flipped. To see how big that flip really is, you need to know where he was just 12 months earlier. Hamilton's 2025 season at Ferrari was the worst of his 19-year career by every number that matters. 6th in the Drivers' Championship. 152 points, 86 behind Leclerc, outqualified 19-5. 0 Grand Prix podiums across the whole season, ending a run of 18 straight years with at least one podium that went all the way back to his first season in the sport. His one bright spot was a sprint pole and sprint win at the Chinese Grand Prix, wiped out when he was thrown out of the main race result for a floor plank issue. After that, the year fell apart. A crash alone at Zandvoort, blown team orders in Baku, dead last in qualifying on pure pace at Las Vegas for the first time in his life. 3 straight first-round knockouts to end the year. Hamilton called it a nightmare. He said no matter how hard he tried, it kept getting worse. At one point, during the Hungarian Grand Prix, he told his team to put someone else in the car. At the Spanish Grand Prix, he was reportedly in tears under his helmet after the finish. Ferrari's chairman told him publicly to talk less and drive more. The team stopped putting upgrades on the 2025 car halfway through the year, throwing everything at the 26 project. Hamilton was stuck in a car that was never going to get better. All of this came after 3 rough years at Mercedes, where Hamilton went winless in 22 and 23, finished 7th in 24 for his worst championship result ever, and pulled the exit clause in his deal before that final season even started, because he already knew the partnership was over. 4 straight seasons of falling, from 22 through 25, across 2 different teams and 2 different car eras, the longest drought of his career. That is what Rosberg is measuring against. When he says Hamilton is racing with joy again, he is comparing the current Hamilton to a driver who was crying in the cockpit less than a year ago. The bar for improvement is not high. The question is whether the joy is real and lasting, or whether it is just the relief of someone who has stopped sinking. The Mercedes situation makes that question even harder to answer. Kimi Antonelli, the 19-year-old Italian who took Hamilton's seat at the start of 2025, currently leads the Drivers' Championship. 100 points. 3 straight Grand Prix wins at Shanghai, Suzuka and Miami. 3 straight poles. George Russell sits second on 80 points with 1 win in Melbourne. Mercedes have won every single race in the 2026 season so far. Their engine is the best on the grid by general agreement. Andrea Stella, the McLaren team boss, publicly admitted as much. Mercedes lead the team standings by roughly 45 points over Ferrari. The irony is thick. Toto Wolff, who spent years managing the Hamilton-Rosberg rivalry and the chaos it brought to his team, is now managing the early signs of a Russell-Antonelli rivalry that carries the same echoes. Antonelli is the young star beating the established number 1. Russell is the experienced driver watching his rookie teammate pull ahead. It is 2014 all over again, except this time, the driver who started the original war is watching from the Ferrari garage on the other side of pit lane. The Shanghai podium in round 2 gave the season one of its most striking images. Antonelli on the top step, Russell second, Hamilton third, all 3 tied to the same Mercedes history. And standing next to Antonelli was Peter Bonington, Hamilton's race engineer for over 10 years, who moved with the seat when Hamilton left. Bonington helped Hamilton win 6 world titles. Now he is helping the teenager, who replaced him, win races in the same car. This is not a story about Mercedes falling apart without Hamilton. They are thriving. The honest read is that Hamilton needed this exact mix of things to find himself again. A rule reset that wiped out the cars he hated, a project he could shape from the start, a full year of painful settling in at a new team, a new culture, a new way of working. All 3 had to line up. They have, at least partly, but the team he walked away from is still faster than the team he picked. Not everyone in the paddock is buying the comeback story. Eddie Irvine, a former Ferrari race winner, has warned against reading too much into the China podium. He pointed to Hamilton's 6th-place finish in Japan as proof that the form is up and down and the turnaround is far from certain. David Coulthard has pushed even harder, arguing that the 2026 rules, with their focus on energy saving and active wing systems, may have taken the edge away from natural racers like Hamilton for good. In Coulthard's view, the new cars reward systems management over instinct. A driver like Hamilton, who built his legend on raw feel and late braking, might be fighting against the very nature of these machines. The car matters more than the driver in this era, and Ferrari's car is not the best one out there. The data backs up the concern. Hamilton's strongest result came in China, where energy management was less of a factor on that specific circuit layout. His weakest results, Japan and Miami came at tracks where battery deployment and the super clipping limits hit hardest. If the pattern holds, Hamilton's joy might be circuit-dependent, tied to tracks where the SF26 can mask its energy problems rather than tracks where those problems are exposed. Hamilton himself gave the clearest sign that the joy has limits. After Miami, he said he had nothing. He said he was down on power and spent the whole race just trying to hold on. Those words could have come from any weekend in 2025. The tone was the same, the frustration was the same. The only difference is that in 26, those weekends are the exception rather than the rule. At least so far. Rosberg might be right, that the joy is back. The body language, the energy, the qualifying numbers, and Hamilton's own words all point that way. But joy does not close a 45-point gap to Mercedes in the team standings. Joy does not fix a battery issue on lap 30. And joy does not promise that the driver who looked reborn in Shanghai will not look beaten again by Silverstone. The next 4 races tell the real story: Canada, Spain, Austria, and then the British Grand Prix. Silverstone is the race that matters most. Hamilton has won there a record 9 times. He has never driven a Ferrari at that circuit. The British crowd, which has watched Hamilton dominate that track for nearly 2 decades, will see him arrive in red for the first time. If the SF26 is fast enough, the emotional weight of that weekend could produce the kind of result that turns a good start into a genuine title story. If it is not, Silverstone becomes the clearest signal yet that Ferrari's car, not Hamilton's mindset, is the limiting factor. Rosberg watched Hamilton from across the garage for 4 years. He knows the gap between a real comeback and a false dawn. He also knows that he has called Hamilton's emotional shifts before, during 2025, only to revise his view weeks later when the next race told a different story. Rosberg's read is more sensitive and frequent than it is definitive. He sees the shifts faster than anyone. Whether the shift he is seeing now is permanent is what the next 2 months will answer. If this story keeps building the way it has, you will want to see what happens next. That video is on screen now.